The desert of Arizona was not kind that winter. Snow rarely visited those dry lands, but when it did, it came with fury. The wind screamed through the canyons like a lost spirit, swirling white dust around the lonely figure of a cowboy riding a tired Mustang. His name was Jack Carter, a drifter, a man with no home, no family, and no destination. The only thing that kept him moving was the instinct to survive. That evening, the storm had turned brutal. Thick snowflakes blinded his eyes, and his fingers had long gone numb on the reins. He could barely see the path ahead, and his horse stumbled with every step. The land stretched endlessly, silent and deadly. Jack knew one thing: if he didn't find shelter before nightfall, he'd be frozen before dawn. He muttered to himself, teeth chattering, "Come on, girl, just a little farther." His horse snorted weakly, her breath forming clouds in the cold air. Jack's heart pounded faster with fear. He had crossed deserts, rivers, and gunfights, but this cold, was the enemy he could not shoot. Then, through the thick wall of snow, he saw something. A faint line of smoke rising from behind the rocks. His heart leapt. Smoke, he whispered. Hope was a rare thing for him, but now it burned in his chest like fire. He pushed his horse forward, fighting through the storm until he reached a small, rugged cabin half buried in snow. He dismounted stiffly and stumbled to the door. His knuckles rapped against the wood, once, twice, 3 times. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, a voice from inside, soft but wary. "Who are you?" Jack pressed closer, his voice weak. "Just a traveler, looking for warmth." The door creaked open a few inches. A woman's face appeared in the glow of firelight, dark hair braided with feathers, strong cheekbones, and eyes sharp as a hawk's. She was Apache, proud and cautious. The kind of woman who'd survived in this harsh land without fear of man or nature. "You are far from your kind, cowboy," she said quietly. Her English was clear but accented. "I didn't come to cause trouble," Jack said, pulling off his hat. "Just need a place to warm up before I freeze out there." She studied him for a long moment, then opened the door wider. "Come in, but remember, my fire, my rules." Jack stepped inside, feeling warmth wrap around him like a blanket. The cabin was simple, a small fire, animal skins, and herbs hanging from the ceiling. The smell of smoke and sage filled the air. As he crouched near the fire, the woman watched him silently, her bow and knife close by. Jack felt her eyes on him, not hostile, but measuring. In that moment, he knew he wasn't just a guest. He was being judged, not by law, but by the code of survival that ruled this land. And outside, the wind howled louder, as if warning that the night was far from over. The cabin crackled with the sound of burning wood, a fragile shield against the wild fury outside. Jack sat close to the fire, his hands trembling as warmth slowly returned to his blood. Across the room, the Apache woman moved quietly, graceful, watchful, and calm, like a wolf that had learned to live alone. She poured something from a clay pot into a wooden bowl, a thick, herbal broth that smelled of sage and smoke. Without a word, she placed it before him. Jack nodded gratefully and drank. The bitter warmth ran down his throat, stirring life into his cold body. "Thank you," he said quietly. She didn't respond. Her eyes lingered on him, wary but curious. "You are far from the towns," she finally said. "What brings a white man here, in the heart of the winter?" Jack gave a tired smile. "Just passing through. Looking for work, or maybe something I lost a long time ago." The woman tilted her head. "What did you lose?" He looked into the fire. "Peace," he said simply. For a moment, silence filled the room. Outside, the wind screamed against the walls, shaking the small cabin. The fire flickered, and a cold draft slipped through the cracks. The woman rose and threw another log into the flames, her movements strong and practiced. Then she turned toward him, her expression unreadable. "You can't stay by the fire all night," she said firmly. "This cabin gets cold after midnight. The mountain wind will steal your warmth while you sleep." Jack nodded. "I'll be fine by the fire," he said, adjusting his coat. Her lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "No," she said softly, but with steel in her voice. "You won't. The cold here is cruel. You'll freeze before morning." He frowned, unsure of her meaning. "I'll manage," he replied stubbornly. That's when she looked straight into his eyes and said the words that would burn into his memory forever. "Then share my bed, or freeze to death." Jack blinked, stunned. For a heartbeat, he thought he'd misheard. But her face remained calm, serious, and proud. This wasn't a flirtation, it was survival. I don't mean to disrespect, he stammered, but... She stepped closer, her dark hair falling over her shoulder. You think I offer because I'm weak? She asked sharply. No, I offer because life in these mountains is hard. Fire can't keep two people alive, warmth can. Her words were truth, not temptation. The room fell silent except for the storm outside. Jack swallowed hard, realizing she meant it. Finally, he removed his hat and nodded. Then I'd be a fool to refuse. The woman said nothing more. She lay down on the fur blanket, leaving space beside her. Jack hesitated for a moment, then settled next to her. Outside, the snowstorm roared like an angry spirit, but inside that small cabin, two lonely hearts shared warmth, not just of the body, but of something deeper, ancient, and wordless. And as the night wore on, Jack felt the cold fade away, replaced by the quiet rhythm of her breathing, a sound more comforting than any fire. When the first light of dawn crept through the cracks in the cabin's walls, the storm had finally surrendered. The world outside lay silent and white, wrapped in a blanket of snow. Jack opened his eyes slowly, the warmth of the night still lingering on his skin. For a moment, he didn't move, afraid that if he did, the memory of it would vanish like mist. Beside him, the Apache woman was already awake. She sat near the fire, her dark hair shining in the pale morning glow. She was weaving something between her fingers, feathers, beads, and a thin strip of leather. Her movements were steady and graceful, as if she were performing a sacred ritual. Jack sat up and rubbed his eyes. Morning, he murmured, his voice rough from sleep. She didn't look up. You should go soon. When the sun rises higher, the snow will soften, and you can ride. He nodded slowly, feeling an ache deep inside, a strange heaviness he couldn't name. You saved my life, he said. I owe you more than words. Finally, she turned to him, her eyes calm and unreadable. You owe me nothing. The mountains test every soul. Some pass, some don't. Jack smiled faintly. Guess I was lucky you found me. She shook her head. You found me. No one finds an Apache woman unless she allows it. There was pride in her tone, but also something softer, something she didn't say aloud. Jack felt it in the quiet space between them. He stood and walked toward the door. His horse waited outside, half buried in snow, but alive. The storm had left the land glistening, wild, clean, and cruelly beautiful. He turned back to her. What's your name? He asked. She hesitated. Nayeli, she said finally. It means, I love you, in the old tongue. Jack's heart tightened. Then I'll remember that name, he said quietly. Nayeli rose and came closer. In her hand was the thing she had been weaving, a small amulet made of feathers, beads, and red thread. She placed it gently into his palm. This will keep the spirit of warmth with you, she said. So you won't forget this night. Jack closed his fingers around the gift. I won't forget, he whispered. Not the storm, not you. Their eyes met, and for a long heartbeat, the world disappeared. No snow, no wind, no past. Just two souls that had found each other in the vast emptiness of the American frontier. He climbed onto his horse, the amulet tied around his neck. As he rode away, the sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light over the white land. He didn't look back, but he didn't need to. He could feel her watching him, strong and silent as the mountains themselves. And far behind him, Nayeli stood in the doorway of her cabin, her lips curved in the faintest smile. She touched the place where he had slept and whispered to the wind, "Ride safe, cowboy." The wind carried her words across the frozen hills, a promise, a farewell, and perhaps, the beginning of a legend.